For the very latest, let's bring in our Moscow correspondent, Thomas Lowe. Thomas, first of all, talk us through this ruling. Just why has Navalny been barred?
Well, the ruling was handed down just a couple of hours ago, so recent news here. The head of the Electoral Commission said in a stream that was broadcast live on YouTube that Alexei Navalny, the opposition activist, anti-corruption campaigner, won't be allowed to present as a candidate for next year's presidential elections to be held in March. He said that that's because he's been found guilty on criminal charges of fraud. Now, that's true, he was, but it was a decision that was later struck down by the European Court of Human Rights. There was a feisty exchange, which was also streamed live between Alexei Navalny himself and Ella Pamfilova, who's the head of the Electoral Commission, where she explained her decision. She also said that Alexei Navalny was guilty, effectively, of brainwashing children. It's true that a lot of his support does come from the youth vote and people who are unable to vote because they're two young 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, for example. Navalny's response was very clear, and this was as much a response to his supporters as it was to the Electoral Commission. He said, if you don't let me run, which is their decision, then these elections will be considered illegitimate. People won't believe in the process, and they won't believe the result either.
Now, Thomas, just what impact will this ruling have on March's vote? Is there now any credible opposition candidate to face President Vladimir Putin, who's, of course, seeking re-election?
Well, there's no credible opposition to speak of. There's only one other person, really, who's outside what's referred to here as the systemic opposition. That is, those in the opposition parties who present themselves, their candidatures, each time there's a presidential election. So if we could talk about the Liberal Party, the Communist Party, Yabloko, which is in name an opposition party, but it's the same candidate. These are old faces. There's another candidate, Sobchak, her name is, but she's really doesn't have much support. She hasn't been able to organise a solid campaign which is across the country, and she's known more as a TV personality as anything else. So because of these old faces, because there is essentially now, after this decision, no real alternative to Vladimir Putin, what the Electoral Commission is openly worried about is the turnout in the presidential elections next March, now that Alexei Navalny won't be running, because what he's done is he's called for a boycott. He says that's what the authorities fear most. He says that he's going to turn his headquarters, not into his election headquarters, into centres that will fight against the elections, fight against the vote, and call for people not to turn out.